All right, so we're diving into smarter AI today, like how to get LLMs to actually think better.
Yeah, it's a big shift, isn't it? Going from just having LLMs generate text to kind of like fine-tuning their reasoning.
Exactly. That's like optimizing how they think. And we've got two main approaches,
We do.
chain of thought and then the new kid on the blockchain of draft.
That's right.
So with chain of thought for short, it's basically like giving the LLM a notepad and say, okay, show your work, walk me through the steps.
Yeah, and that's like a really simple change, but it makes a huge difference.
It does.
Especially for complex problems. LLMs suddenly become way better at stuff like solving those tricky math word problems,
Right.
or even figuring out what's implied but not directly said in a story.
So it's like they finally have a method to their madness instead of just like throwing out words.
Right.
But here's the thing. This is where it gets interesting. CoT can get a little long-winded.
Yeah, you could say that they can get very verbose, almost like they're afraid to leave any little detail out. And, if you think about it in terms of efficiency, all that extra text generation, it takes a lot of computing power and time.
It's like waiting for your phone to calculate a tip and it starts writing a novel.
Exactly.
So that's where chain of draft or CoD swoops in like the minimalist,
Yes.
super efficient cousin of CoD.
It really is. The core idea is to just focus on the key points, like the bare minimum to guide that reasoning process.
So almost like how you'd brainstorm, right?
Exactly.
Jotting down quick ideas instead of writing out full sentences.
Yeah, that's kind of what CoD is going for.
So we've got these two techniques, both trying to make LLMs think better. CoD is our detailed note taker. CoD is all about efficiency. And today we're going to look at some research comparing them head to head
Okay.
on tasks like math problems, common sense reasoning, even abstract stuff like manipulating symbols.
The really exciting part is seeing how much we can achieve with less,
Right.
That ability of CoD to simplify without sacrificing accuracy is really where the potential lies.
It's like finding that shortcut that doesn't get you lost.
Exactly.
So imagine getting answers from an AI that's smart and respects your time. No more sifting through pages of output.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That's the promise of CoD. And today we're going to see if it delivers.
Sounds good. Let's start with the research on arithmetic reasoning. They used a data set called GSM-8K,
Okay.
which is basically a bunch of grade school level math problems.
Oh, yeah, the kind that always trip people up.
Yes, exactly.
Word problems were my nemesis back in the day.
Mine too. The study tested different LLMs from smaller ones with billions of parameters. Think of those as like the knobs and dials that control the LLM,
Okay.
to massive ones with hundreds of billions.
Wow.
And what they found is that for the smaller models, CoT didn't really make much of a difference. They still struggled whether they explained their reasoning or not.
Interesting.
But when they scaled up to those larger models, things got interesting.
Let me guess, the large models with code suddenly became math whizzes.
You got it. The models with over 100 billion parameters showed a huge jump in accuracy with CoT.
Wow.
It's like they finally had the capacity to really think through those steps properly.
Okay, so CoT works great for the bigger models, but where does code fit into this?
Well, they tested CoD on those same large models and did this. It achieved the same level of accuracy as CoT,
Really?
but using far fewer tokens.
Oh, no, back up a sec. What are tokens again?
Right, so think of tokens as like the individual units of language that LLMs process words, punctuation marks,
Yeah.
even parts of words.
So fewer tokens means the LLM is processing and generating less text overall.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. So code is like saying the same thing, but in a shorter, snappier way. And how much shorter are we talking?
In many cases, CoD used less than 10% of the tokens that CoD did.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a fantastic example of how efficiency doesn't have to mean compromising on accuracy.
Right.
In fact, there were even cases where CoD actually outperformed CoD.
Now that's impressive for the minimalist approach.
It is, but it's not just about saving tokens. This efficiency translates into faster, more responsive LLMs. Imagine how much smoother and more natural our interactions with AI could be.
Yeah, no more waiting around for the AI to churn through like a wall of text.
Exactly. CoD has the potential to make LLMs truly interactive and engaging.
Okay, so we've seen how well CoD performs with like arithmetic, but how does it handle other types of thinking?
Good question.
Like common sense reasoning, where LLMs need to figure out what's likely to happen in everyday situations.
Right, that feels a lot closer to how we think.
It does.
So for this, the researchers used tasks from something called the Big Bench benchmark,
Okay.
which is a collection of tests for language understanding.
Uh-huh.
They specifically looked at date understanding, like if today is Tuesday, what day was it, 3 days ago?
Okay.
And sports understanding.
So basically making sure the LLM doesn't think you can score a touchdown in football by kicking the ball through the goalposts.
Exactly. You'd need a pretty strong kicker for that.
They tested both CoD and CoD on these tasks across various LLM sizes.
They did. And the trend continued. CoD consistently outperformed CoD.
Really?
In both accuracy and efficiency, it almost seemed like CoD was tailor-made for these tasks that rely on connecting the dots and making inferences.
It's like CoD was giving the LLM a little nudge saying, hey, pay attention to the context. Think about what makes sense in the real world.
That's a great way to put it, and this ability to guide the LLM towards a more grounded, contextually aware way of reasoning is super important for developing AI that can truly understand and interact with the world around it.
Okay, so we've covered numbers and everyday logic now. Let's get a little more abstract and talk about symbolic manipulation.
Okay.
It's almost like the LLM equivalent of solving those brain teaser puzzles.
Right. For this, they used a task called coin flip, where the LLM has to keep track of a coin's state as it's flipped multiple times.
Okay.
It's simple on the surface, but it requires the LLM to grasp the idea of how states change and to keep track of all those changes.
So like if a coin starts heads up and gets flipped 3 times, which side is up at the end?
Exactly. Definitely requires some mental juggling.
For sure. And standard prompting without either CoT or CoD led to a lot of errors, even with large LLMs.
It did. They often got confused about the final state of the coin.
But I bet CoT and CoD saved the day.
You bet they did. Both achieve near perfect accuracy on this task, proving they could guide the LLM through the logical steps to get to the right answer.
Okay.
And you guessed it, CoD did so with significantly fewer tokens than CoD.
So CoD is on a roll. It seems like this principle of being concise and efficient works well across a variety of challenges.
That's what's so promising. These results suggest that CoD's approach might be universally applicable, whether it's math common sense or even abstract reasoning.
So CoD seems to be winning this deep dive so far.
It does.
But before we declare a victor, let's zoom out and think about the bigger picture. What do these findings mean for the future of LLMs and how we interact with them?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's one we'll explore further when we continue our deep dive. You know, one of the really interesting things about both CoT and CAD is that they kind of challenge this assumption that bigger is always better when it comes to LLMs.
You mean just throwing more data and computing power at the problem isn't always the answer?
Exactly. Larger models have more potential, sure, but they also use up way more resources, which has, both cost and environmental implications.
And let's not forget about the potential for bias and other ethical concerns which tend to amplify with those mega models.
Oh, absolutely.
So CoD, by being more efficient, offers a way to achieve comparable or even better results, but with smaller models.
Right.
Which could make powerful AI more accessible and sustainable in the long run.
Exactly. And it might even change how we think about training LLMs.
Oh, how so?
Well, instead of just force-feeding them tons of data, we might need to focus on encouraging them to develop more concise and effective reasoning strategies right from the start.
It's like teaching them good thinking habits early on, instead of letting them become like digital hoarders of information.
Exactly. If we can get LLMs to think more like humans, focusing on the key points and cutting out all the noise, it could be a game changer.
Imagine a world where AI gives us clear, concise, insightful answers.
Yes.
Without burying us in like useless information.
That would be great.
CoD could be the key to making that vision a reality.
It really could, and this leads us to another fascinating question.
Okay.
Could the principles of CoD be applied beyond just LLMs? Could it help us design better algorithms in general, or even change how we approach problem solving in our own lives?
Now that's a thought-provoking question, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's get back to the research and dig into some more comparisons between CoD and CoD.
Okay, sounds good.
You mentioned earlier that CoD might be better suited for tasks that require keeping track of multiple things happening at once.
Yes, exactly. To test this, they looked at a more complex version of that coin flip task, where each flip could involve multiple coins.
So instead of just one coin flipping over and over, it's like having a handful of coins all flipping at different times.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like it would get confusing fast.
It does. It's similar to those logic puzzles where you have to figure out the fewest moves to reach a specific arrangement.
Right.
And as you might expect, standard prompting without CoD or CoD completely failed.
Oh, really?
The LLMs just couldn't keep up with all the changing states.
So they were totally lost.
Yeah, pretty much. But I'm guessing, what's coming next, CoD and CoD were up for the challenge.
I was going to say, those are our heroes of the day.
They are. They both showed significantly higher accuracy, demonstrating that they could effectively guide the LLMs through these more intricate reasoning steps.
Okay.
And as we've seen before, CoD used significantly fewer tokens than CoD, highlighting its efficiency, even when things get more complicated.
So it's becoming increasingly clear that CoD has a real knack for situations that require juggling multiple variables and keeping track of a lot of moving parts.
Think about the potential applications, AI assistants that can seamlessly manage your travel plans,
Okay.
considering flights, hotels, and your budget all at once.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Or AI that can help you organize your calendar, optimize your schedule, remind you of important deadlines
Right.
without getting overwhelmed by all the details.
These are all tasks that rely on really complex reasoning and the ability to handle like tons of information simultaneously.
Yes.
So CoD could be the breakthrough that makes LLMs truly proficient in these areas.
It could. And, so far all this research has been done using those huge resource-intensive LLMs.
Right, the ones with all the billions of parameters.
Exactly. But what about making these benefits accessible to everyone?
That's a good point. Can we bring the power of CoD to smaller, more everyday LLMs?
That's a crucial question for making CoD truly practical and widely applicable. And fortunately,
Yes.
it's an area of very active research right now.
So researchers are working on making CoD more accessible. That's great news. What kind of approaches are they taking?
Well, some are exploring ways to distill the knowledge and skills of those massive LLMs into smaller, more efficient models, almost like creating a condensed version.
It's like taking a huge encyclopedia and summarizing it into a handy pocket guide.
Exactly. Others are looking into new training techniques that could enable smaller LLMs to develop these efficient reasoning strategies right from the beginning without needing to start with a massive model.
Okay, that sounds promising.
Yeah.
Any other exciting avenues that they're exploring?
Well, there's also a lot of work being done on combining CoD with other techniques.
Okay.
Like incorporating external knowledge bases or even training LLMs to use tools to access and process real-world information.
It sounds like there's a whole ecosystem of innovation springing up around CoD.
There is. It's an incredibly exciting time to be in this field as we push the boundaries of what's possible with LLMs.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, one thing that struck me about all of this is how it reflects different ways of thinking.
Yes.
Earlier, you mentioned how CoD is similar to brainstorming, focusing on key ideas instead of getting lost in the weeds.
Yes. CoD encourages LLMs to be selective, to think critically about what information is truly essential, and discard the rest. It's a valuable lesson for us as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of overthinking things and getting stuck in the details.
Yeah.
Sometimes, maybe I need to channel my inner CoD and embrace a more minimalist approach to problem solving.
It's something worth considering. Sometimes getting bogged down in minutia can actually stifle our creativity, preventing us from seeing alternative solutions or making those innovative leaps.
It's like that saying, can't see the forest for the trees. Too much focus on the details can block the big picture.
Exactly. By encouraging LLMs to think more concisely and see that bill picture CoD might actually unlock new pathways for creative problem solving.
So instead of just following pre-programmed rules, LLMs could start to think outside the box, come up with novel solutions.
Yes.
Maybe even surprise us with their ingenuity.
That's the hope. It's still early days, of course, but the potential is there. It's fascinating to imagine what the future holds for these increasingly capable AI systems.
Okay, so we've talked about how CoD can make LLMs more efficient, more accessible, and potentially even more creative. But let's get practical for a moment. How could CoD impact real-world applications and how we interact with LLMs in everyday life?
That's a great question. One of the most immediate benefits is the potential for much faster and more responsive LLMs.
Okay.
This is crucial for applications where real-time interaction is key.
So imagine chatbots that can answer your questions instantly
Right.
without that annoying delay while they process everything, or language translation apps that can translate speech in real time, enabling seamless conversations across language barriers.
Exactly. These are just a few examples of how CoD could change the way we communicate and access information.
Right.
And it's not just about speed.
Wow.
CoD could also make it possible to run sophisticated LLMs on devices with limited processing power, like smartphones or even wearables.
So a personal AI assistant on your smartwatch that can help you navigate a new city, offer tailored recommendations, or even monitor your health and well-being.
Exactly.
It all becomes possible with CoD's ability to deliver concise and insightful responses without overloading a device's resources.
Precisely. And let's not forget the economic impact.
Right.
CoD could make using LLMs much more affordable, making this technology accessible to a wider range of individuals and organizations.
It's incredible to think that something as simple as focusing on the essential points could potentially revolutionize how we interact with AI and how it integrates into our lives.
It really highlights the power of elegant solutions inspired by natural processes, in this case, the way the human mind works.
So we've talked about all the amazing things CoD can do, but before we wrap things up, there's one crucial point I want to touch on.
What's that?
Well, throughout this deep dive, we've been discussing LLMs as these powerful tools that can solve problems, answer questions, and even generate creative text.
Right.
But it's important to remember that they are just the tools.
Tools that are ultimately guided and controlled by us humans.
Exactly. As we develop these increasingly sophisticated AI systems, we need to maintain a sense of responsibility and be mindful of the ethical implications.
For sure.
We need to ensure that these tools are used for good and benefit society as a whole.
It's a balancing act for sure. As we strive to make LLMs think more like humans, we also need to ensure we humans use them in a way that reflects our values and aspirations.
Well said. And on that note, let's move on to the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some of the open questions and exciting future directions for research in this rapidly evolving field.
Yeah.
We've seen how CoD can boost efficiency and even spark creativity in LLMs. But there's still so much we just don't know.
Right.
It's like we've just scratched the surface of this whole new approach.
Definitely.
So one of the biggest mysteries is why CoD works so well.
Yeah. Is it simply about reducing the workload for the LLM, like letting it focus its processing power on those essential reasoning steps?
Or is there something more profound happening?
Yeah.
Could it be that by forcing the LLM to condense its knowledge and reasoning
Right.
into a more compact form, are we actually enhancing its cognitive processes?
That's a great question. It raises all these fascinating questions about how we learn and think, both AI and humans.
Exactly.
Could constraints like the limited tokens in CoD actually boost our ability to think deeply and creatively?
It's like that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Limitations can force us to think outside the box and come up with ingenious solutions.
Precisely. This idea of constraints driving innovation is something we can explore not only in LLMs, but also in human learning and problem solving.
Right.
Could we improve our own thinking by embracing constraints and finding ways to distill our knowledge to its essence?
That's a deep dive for another day.
It is.
But for now, let's stick with LLMs. Another question is how to best implement CoD in the real world.
Okay.
Currently, researchers are manually creating those concise drafts for the LLMs to learn from. But that's not scalable in the long run. We need to find ways to automate this process.
Yes, perhaps training LLMs to generate their own CoDs, or using reinforcement learning techniques to reward them for concise and accurate reasoning.
So it's like teaching them to become their own editors,
Exactly.
constantly refining and tightening their thought processes.
Yeah, and then there's the question of how CoD interacts with other advancements in LLM capabilities.
Right, because we're seeing incredible progress in incorporating external knowledge bases, training LLMs to use tools for accessing and processing real-world information.
Yeah.
Even having LLMs interact with each other in multi-agent settings.
It's like we're building this whole ecosystem around these LLMs, giving them access to this vast network of information and capabilities.
And CoD has the potential to be a fundamental principle in this ecosystem.
Absolutely.
A cornerstone for building more efficient, robust, and ultimately more human-like AI systems.
It's really amazing to think that such a simple idea, inspired by the way humans think, could have such a profound impact on the future of AI.
It really is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to encourage all of you listening to keep pondering these questions, stay curious, and continue exploring the incredible possibilities at the intersection of AI and human ingenuity.
Well said.
You've given us a lot to think about today.
I hope so.
So to our listeners, keep those minds curious and those imaginations firing.
Yes.
Who knows, maybe one of you will be the one to make the next breakthrough in AI.
It could happen.
Until our next deep dive, stay informed and stay engaged.